you may not, but again, I'll let everybody know here in just a second once that turns on. There we go. We are now recording, everybody, so just one more time for full disclosure, everybody, we are being recorded. Now that we've done that, again, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. Excited to talk about the program. We'll be walking through things start to finish as best we can. And then we'll also be making sure to have time today to do some live Q&A. So before we get into that and before we dive right in, a couple quick notes for how to navigate this, especially the Q&A part, to make sure that you all have the ability and understand how to ask or push forward questions as we go through today. So what we'll be using for the purposes of today's the Q&A piece specifically is we're going to use the Q&A feature of this webinar platform. And I'm actually going to share my screen right now to show you what that might look like on your screens at home or on your mobile. Essentially, what you're going to be looking for is this little icon. It's either going to say Q&A or it's going to have a question mark on it, but that's essentially what you're looking for. If you want to ask a question, it will look like this. Depending on how your screen is organized, it may also look like this down in your toolbar. That's the Q&A feature. When you go there, you can enter that in and you can answer questions, you ask questions, and then we'll be able to respond to those in real time as we go through. So again, I'll pause at different times today to respond to Q&A if I can. Otherwise, like I said, I'll make sure to have time at the end to do that. So you don't need to wait until the end to submit any questions, but I would encourage you to probably wait a little bit because we may very well cover that as we go through, because here is the plan for our session today. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to walk everybody through how and where to access the program website and program resources, so that after or outside of this call, if you don't already have it or don't already know how to get there, it's nice and easy to find all the program information in one place. From there, we're going to go through the program itself. I'm going to walk through all the guidance. We'll talk through what this program actually is, how it works, who's eligible. We'll go through the full set of guidance. We'll talk about any of the information that you need to prepare as you get ready to fill out and submit the application. And then we're all going to go through and actually do the application. So we'll pull up an application live today and go through and look at that so that there's no confusion as to what that process looks like as well, and how that will work for all of you as you submit your applications. And then, of course, after that, we come back and that's where we'll have the open Q&A time if we haven't already addressed that question, of course. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and get started today. And as I mentioned, our first stop on today's call, and let me say this again, we will be using the Q&A feature, so we won't be raising hands, we won't be using the chat feature. So do make sure that if you have questions when we get there, that you put them directly into the Q&A. Again, we won't be unmuting or doing anything like that. You're going to want to put that directly into the Q&A. All right, so with that, here we go. You have a couple of different ways to access the program resources for the Child Care Provider and Employee Bonus Retention Program. First of all, as many of you probably seen, I also sent out a direct email to almost the full list today. Those are still coming out, but that was about 6,600 providers earlier this morning. You can also look for information on our social media. On Tuesday Tidbits, there's going to be a call coming out to everybody in English and Spanish to remind everybody to apply. So, and we'll be, putting the website information with that as well. We want to try and get out in as many different ways and as many different times as possible the way to access the program and make sure you know it's there and can get into it. Quickest and easiest way to do that is, of course, ultimately where it lives, which is on the MSDE website, which is marylandpublicschools.org. So again, through any of the emails that we've sent out or any of the correspondence or through our social media, you can typically click and get a direct link into it. But short of that, you are also more than welcome to come over to our website. Here are the two ways on our website that you can get to the program information. First, the quickest way, it's a little bit of a shortcut, is on the news releases side. So when you come to our homepage, you'll see on the news releases side, it's actually the most recent news release here, that we have the announcement for the Child Care Provider and Child Care Employee Bonus Program. That's going to be your quickest way. Even if we have some new releases that come out between now and the end of this program, you'll be able to find that link here. You're going to click into it. Once it takes you to that next page, you scroll to the bottom of the press release, you actually have the direct link here to the program website, and it takes you right to it. Okay, that's going to be your quickest way if you're just going cold to the MSDE website and you want to try and get here. It'll zoom you right to the program site. If you're not, if you want to take the scenic route, you are more than welcome to do so, and I want to give that out there for a couple of reasons. One, because I think it's a helpful way to access this, and two, as I show you this is actually a way in general, if you ever want to check in on other grant opportunities or programs that the department is running at any time. We've now centralized that so you can access all of our information in one place to make that hopefully a little bit easier to navigate. So the way you're going to do that is on our homepage. So I'm back here on our homepage. You're going to go to Offices and Divisions. You're going to scroll down to Finance, which is Financial Planning, Operations, and Strategy. Once you're here, you're going to see on the right Grants Administration and Compliance. Once you click into Grants Administration and Compliance, all you have to do from there is click MSDE grant programs. And here, like I said, you'll actually get a full list of grant programs, grants with open application windows. You can access pages of programs that are currently open. They're in performance period. Application window might have passed, but if you're looking for information about them or wanting to see if that's going to come up next year or get a heads up on future applications, if you're trying to look ahead, you can do that here. And then any of our formula grant programs are also here. So just a note overall, this can be a helpful resource, but specific to today, as you can see right up on top, we have the Child Care Provider and Employee Bonus Program. And when you click that, it brings you right back to that page. So again, we took the scenic route here, but hopefully this can be a helpful resource any other time you might need that or want to look on the site for anything associated with this or other grant programs. If you're just trying to find a central place to go to figure out what the heck you might be eligible for or how you might access it, head on there. Once you get to the program website, a couple things to know about navigating the site here. First, you just get an overall snapshot of the program. As I'm sure many of you may have done if you didn't do it directly through the actual email we've sent out. This is also where you can go to access the other links for future sessions. We do have 2 more sessions coming up. That will be Thursday of next week and Saturday as well. We have an evening and a weekend time coming up. What we will be doing shortly is posting the videos. We will be posting the recordings of sessions here. And we'll also be posting frequently asked questions based on the types of questions we get with this meeting in these conversations as we go throughout. So just a heads up to take a look for that as we continue forward. So with that in mind, I'm going to head over here to 2 pieces that are the most important pieces on the program website. 1, the program information guide, and 2, the attestation form. And we're going to talk about what both of those are here in a second. So don't worry, we're going to dive right in. But these are essentially the big pieces that you're looking for when you come to the program website. The actual application link, for example, all of that is actually in the program information guidance. We do that because we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to read through, understand the program, get everything together that you might need for the application, have some sense of eligibility and how the program works before you jump into the application. That way you're more likely to submit a full, complete, accurate application, make sure you're eligible, and all of that. For now, I'm going to go ahead and click into that. So I can click this here. If you want it, you can always save this. You can retain this. These are documents that you can keep if you want to. You don't have to come back to the website. You can always download these and save them. That's perfectly fine. But again, once you come to this is sort of your one-stop shop for how the program works. So this is what gives you your overview. This is what tells you, again, there's several points in here where to give you direct access to the application link. And then, of course, any other eligibility information or just how the program will be administered, timelines, all of that live here. So overall, and we'll do this as we go through the program guidance, what is the Child Care Provider and Employee Retention Bonus Program? This is a program that was established in law this past spring through House Bill 1100. It's enrolled as Chapter 594. But this piece of legislation in the law established this one-time child care provider and employee bonus program. The law provides $16 million for this program this year. Again, it's one time, it's this year. And it does so, it spreads out across a couple of different buckets. And we'll talk about what those buckets are and how that works as we get into the weeds on the program here. Overall, though, the intent of this program is to provide, just like it sounds, retention bonuses and in some cases hiring incentives for providers and their staff in recognition of, all of the amazing and hard work that you all do, recognizing how important these resources are, making sure that you get access to these resources, and that your teams, your employees do as well. And one thing to note, we're going to talk about this as we get into eligibility, but I do want to say this a couple times as we go today. I know it's called the Child Care Provider and Employee Bonus Program. So we took that right out of the law. That's actually the name of the law. And it's the Child Care Provider and Employee Bonus Program, meaning you do not need to have employees to be eligible for this program. So if you're looking at this already and wondering, my goodness, I'm just a small family, not just, first of all, there's no such thing as just, but I'm a small family childcare center. I don't have employees, but I meet all these other criteria. Am I eligible? Can I claim myself? And the answer to that is absolutely yes, you can. We'll talk about how you do that in just a minute. Quick note on this, overall deadline for this. So the last day we're taking applications is November 30th at 5 p.m. Eastern time. I encourage you to not wait for that. This is, as we'll talk through here, and it is by law. So the law says we have to administer this program first come, first serve. And so as you can imagine, with only $16 million, the program is not by law designed to be or make it out to everybody. It is a smaller program in the sense that it's $16 million. So we do encourage you to get your applications in as soon as you're able. What does the application process look like? What does eligibility look like? Let's get into the weeds and figure out how this program works. So a couple things here. First of all, we're going to do the application last because we're going to go through the program first. But just to note, as far as the actual process of applying goes, in the program guidance, you'll click the link. It'll take you to the program application. It's online. It is an online application only. The reason we are taking online applications only, again, is because of the requirement for us to administer this as first come, first serve. By doing it online, we're able to get really precise timestamps in fairness to everybody who's applying for this so that we have a really clear, unquestionable sense of what the order is in terms of application submissions and the time that those are submitted. Some things to think about here as we start to dive into this. What do you need to get ready as you go to fill out the application? Here's what you're going to need. You're going to need the hire date of your employees. If you don't have employees, think about yourself here too, because we do ask you, even if you don't have employees, list yourself as an employee. First and last name, the amount of time employed per week in hours. Okay, the amount of time employed per week in hours. There are going to be cases where you have staff that might not necessarily have the same schedule each week. That's perfectly fine. Go ahead and use the average amount of hours worked per week. That's completely fine. Next thing you're going to want to know is whether or not the employee held a credential through the Maryland Child Care Credential Program on or by June 30th of 2022, this past year. Or if not, you're going to want to know whether or not they will hold a credential through the Maryland Child Care Credential Program by on or by June 30th of 2023, this coming June. That is a requirement of the program. And again, that requirement is written in the law. And so that's a piece that is necessary for eligibility for employees or for providers. Last, attestation, right? So I know I mentioned a second ago when we were on that first page, the attestation form. That is the employee's commitment to remain employed with the provider for 6 months. Now, we only need you to fill out that, have employees fill that out for anybody who's joined since July 1, 2022. Okay, so the way that the provisions of the law work is it's essentially trying to make sure that somebody is there or will be there for at least 6 months. And so if you were there on or by June 30th of 2022, this past summer, you're essentially, by the time you get here to this administration and determination, you're already at the 6 months, right? However, if you have somebody who started on or after July 1, they wouldn't have met that 6-month requirement yet. And so again, part of the law requires us to make sure that there's a commitment from those employees to remain employed for that 6-month duration, at least. Once you collect those forms, so a couple of notes here, you're going to collect those forms. What you use for the form is technically up to you. On our main page here, we do have, as I said, an attestation form. You are more than welcome to use this form. If this is easy, if you don't want to think about, oh my goodness, how do I go and how do I craft a an attestation form? What does that look like? No problem. You're welcome to use this. You can print it or you can do it digitally, whatever's easier for you. Have your staff sign it. And then at the end of that, keep it. Okay. You do not send that to us. So I know some of the questions we've had have been, well, we got them. We have the attestation forms. Where do we send them? You don't. You hold them. Make sure they're completed, hold them, retain them for your records, right? So in case there is ever an audit for this down the road or something like that, do please be prepared to provide that. That being said, again, you don't need to send that to us. All you have to do is keep it. And as you'll see in a couple of minutes when we do the application, when you're in the application, you're just going to check off that, yes, I've got that signed form for that employee, right? And when you're doing that because you've collected this form. So again, you don't need to use this form. You are more than welcome to use your own form. But either way, for employees who started on or after July 1st of 2022, you're going to want to collect that and have that so that when you're submitting the application, you can check that off accordingly so that we can make sure you have all of those pieces in line. Now, how does this program work? So first of all 3 buckets of the program have some sort of relationship to the Child Care Scholarship Program. What's a quick way to know if you've met the Child Care Scholarship Program participation requirement? Quickest way to know is, have you been paid in the last 6 months, essentially July 1 to November 1, for having a child enrolled with an actively receipted and assigned Child Care Scholarship Program voucher? Even if it was one child for one service period in the middle of July, great. In your mind, check off, yes, we're good to go. If that's not the case, don't worry. It does not mean that you are not eligible. What we are going to be doing as we go through is we are going to be checking against the list of Excel's participating providers, right? Because in order to be a part of the Child Care Scholarship Program, you have to be participating in the Maryland Excels program. So what we're going to do is, step 1 for us is, hey, have you received an active, have you been paid in the last 6 months? Great, check, done. And again, that's just a way for us to tell you if you want a quick way to mentally check off your own eligibility and fulfillment of that requirement, that's a really easy way to do that. The other easy way to do that is to know whether or not you're an Excel's participating provider, because that's the other check. If you don't have a student, because there are many of you who would take a student or who haven't been, if they've even been trying and haven't been able to have that student enroll, that's fine. We're just going to go, as long as you meet that Excel's requirement, then technically you would be participating or eligible to participate in the Child Care Scholarship Program. You, in terms of the review team as we're going through, you've met that eligibility requirement. How does the program work in terms of these buckets now? As I mentioned earlier, it's $16 million total, but that's divided 3 different ways. Again, this isn't something the department decided to do. The law is really super clear about this, and it divides it in order in these ways. First, the first bucket of money out of that $16 million is $10 million. Of the total $16 million, $10 million specifically is to go to provide $1,000 retention bonuses to individuals who are employed by, again, and this is straight out of the law, this is where we get that Child Care Scholarship Program participating requirement, who were employed by a child care provider on June 30th of 2022. So somebody who was employed at a provider this past June. And again, this also goes for a provider who, even if you didn't have employees, right, this is where you're essentially considering yourself there. that you've been employed by the provider at least 20 hours per week. And again, this is all language straight out of the law. So, if you ever want to look it up, you can certainly click through here, but all of these pieces come straight out of the law, employed for at least 20 hours a week. So that's why, because some people have asked, why do we have that requirement in there? We have that in there because that's exactly what the law says. So you have to be employed for at least 20 hours per week, and then you either needed to have held a credential through the Maryland Child Care Credential Program as of June 30th, or you will earn a credential by this June 30th. What level of credential? Any, right? You just need to have that credential, and that person needs to be serving children. Okay, those are the requirements. So that's the first bucket. So for somebody who was, including in many cases yourselves, who was there, who was employed on June 30th of 2022, that's the first bucket, $1,000 bonuses. It's the biggest bucket of the program. It's $10 million. The next bucket that the law breaks out is this $4 million bucket. So after we have that first bucket, we have a second bucket, $4 million. That is to provide up to $1,000 in retention bonuses per eligible employee, up to. So you'll notice there's already a little bit of a difference here. Here's how that works. It's essentially split between an initial and a second $500 bonus. Okay. So first of all, this is for any employees who began employment during this fiscal year. And so just to be really clear, when I say fiscal year for us at the state here, that's between July 1st, 2022 and June 30th of 2023. Okay, so this is somebody who's started employment during that time period. Just as with the first part of the program, this also has that requirement for at least 20 hours per week. They do have to remain employed for 3 months and commit to remaining employed for at least 6 months in total. Right, so they had to have been there for at least 3 months. So if the July, August, September, so if they started in July, they had to have been there for at least 3 months. So then, you can distribute from there. So that's the first criteria. So one of the questions we often get is, hey, I have an employee, they're new this year. They don't have a credential yet, and they haven't met their, they haven't been here 6 months, but they did attest to it. They've been here 3 months and they're working at least 20 hours a week, and we meet all the other criteria. We are, we're participating in the Child Care Scholarship Program, et cetera. What do we do? Well, you have a couple choices here, and we'll talk as we get further on about how to administer the bonuses and what that looks like. We also want to go over some of the tax provisions and just things to think about when you're making those choices about how you decide to administer it, because you do have some flexibility in how you choose to do that. But all told here, this is the first chunk of this bucket. So $4 million total, up to $1,000 in bonuses. The first half of that $1,000 can go to employees who meet those first set of criteria. And then you can release the second half of that $1,000, so the second $500, if and when they get that credential by June 30th of 2023, so this is an and when they've crossed that marker, so when they've been there for at least 6 months. They got to stay for at least 6 months to get that second half. So that's $4 million. So we have $10 million for a bucket for employees and providers who are there by June 30th of 2022. We have a $4 million bucket for employees who are new hires between July 1st and essentially June 30th to come. And then we have this last bucket, so $2 million. These are for hiring assistance bonuses. These are provided to the provider, right? And these are specifically associated with the number of new hires in this fiscal year, right? So again, between July 1, 2022 and June 30, 2023. Obviously, you may, and we'll talk about this in a second, there may be a chance or a circumstance where you hire individuals or are planning to hire more people in the time to come. You may not be able to reflect that right now. That's understood, but what you ultimately are going to want to report here as you submit this is the number of employees you have to date, right? Because otherwise you can't necessarily have a future employee make an attestation or make some sort of commitment when they might not even work for you yet. The reason that matters here is because, again, while technically speaking, if you have an employee who you think is going to start in 3 months from now or something like that, first of all, that would be outside the application window. And second of all, this is first come, first serve program. Again, it's $16 million. We will likely go through the full amount with this administration. So you'll want to make sure to keep that in mind when you're filling this out, right? Balancing, okay, well, I want to wait a week or two because I have some new staff coming in, but I also want to make sure that I get it in on time. Just things to think about. But all told here, that $2 million bucket, it's $500 per employee that we see as higher with the higher date, July 1st, 2022 or sooner. And that is not a bonus for the new hire. That's a bonus for you, the provider. It's designed to help cover costs for marketing, recruitment, perhaps credential costs if they need to be credentialed and you want to get them on the way to do that. Even some initial salary costs, et cetera, for those employees that you, the provider, can choose what you want to do with it. So those are the 3 buckets of funds. And so all of those are covered in one application that you're submitting. And we'll look at this all in a second. You don't submit separate applications for this. We make those determinations using all the information that you submit combined with what we already have in our records, so we didn't need you to submit. We have the Maryland Child Care Credentialing Program here at MSDE. We have those records. We don't need you to submit those. Same with Excel's participation. We have those records. Same with Child Care Scholarship Program. We have those records. There's no reason to ask you to go ahead and go and try and dig those up. So if you're looking at the application and as we get into that, wondering why you don't see those pieces specifically, that's because we have that already and there's no need for you to go ahead and do that. We're trying to reduce burden and time for everybody. As I said, the program is administered on a first come, first served basis. Because of that, we recognize that we wanted to do something to make sure that there was, as best we could, fair access to this pot of resources regionally, across the state. So what the department has done with the 16 million and with those 3 buckets is we have pre-apportioned that funding to the different counties and Baltimore City throughout the state, so that as you were applying, we're making sure that providers from Kent to Garrett to Baltimore City to Charles to Hartford to Frederick to Wicomico, everybody has some sort of shot at accessing these funds. That being said, once we are done with this, right, if we're going through the list and there are any funds remaining, so let's say, for example, we do the math and we've pre-apportioned $100. Obviously, that's not the exact amount. That's just an example. But let's say that we've apportioned $100 for Charles County. And, we went through all the applicants, went to everybody who was eligible and submitted a full complete application, but we still had $20 left. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to pull that back statewide, and then we're just going to go down the statewide waiting list of first come, first serve in order, right? We're going to make sure that we get all of these funds out to everybody. We don't want to leave anything on the table. These are all for you. How did we do that pre-apportioning? So for full transparency, it's all here, and then the math is kind of at the end as well. If you want to see it county by county and in Baltimore City as well, of course. Here's what we did. We identified the number of licensed childcare providers in each jurisdiction. So, just the number of providers in each jurisdiction. For example, we'll follow Charles County here. Charles County has 229 of the 7,052 licensed childcare providers in the state as of when we pulled these data. That's 3.25% of all providers. Okay, so keep that thought for a second. Next thing we did is we took that $16 million, right, and we split it into the 3 buckets. Okay, so these are the 3 buckets that we just talked about in the program. We took $16 million and we said, okay, well, we're going to set aside 10 million for this part, 4 million for this part of the program, 2 million for this part. And then what we did is we took that 3.25% for Charles County and we said, okay, well, Charles County, how much is we apportioning in Charles County for this first bucket of funds? 3.25% times 10 million. Then for the second bucket and the third bucket onward, which means that's essentially a pool of 324,000 for that first bucket for Charles County. Again, if after the application window closes and there's a jurisdiction or multiple jurisdictions that haven't utilized all of it, we'll pull that back up and continue going down the wait list for folks in jurisdictions who might have not had access because they did exhaust their pre-apportioned amount. Overall, as a reminder, $10 million are going towards $1,000 retention bonuses. for employees who are eligible June 30 and prior, $4 million for, again, $1,000 for new hires, but that's that $500 and $500 split, and $2 million for those hiring assistance bonuses based on the number of new employees that you've hired and that we've reported in your application. Couple of things to note. Here in the program. When you're administering this, right? So when you're actually going to administer the program, there are a couple of different ways you can do this. How you choose to actually pay your staff or yourselves these funds is up to you, but there are a couple important things to consider. What do I mean when it's up to you? Well, you can do this as a one-time check. You can do this as a, in addition to your regular pay, just build it into your payroll. All of those things are accurate. However, it is important to remember that these funds are subject to tax and withholding. So when you do that, you will want to make sure to apply that. So at the end of the day, the take-home payment, if you will not be necessarily $1,000 for the employee. It'll be $1,000, but after taxes. Okay, so just remember that as you're paying those out. Tax advice is something that we can't give. So what I can say is the general disclaimer that if you do have any questions about that or rates or withholding, to consult your tax professional to make sure that you are doing those correctly. Here's the other piece. Knowing that you have some of these attestation requirements and credentialing requirements, right? So first of all, again, and I do see a couple questions here about, if you don't have a credential, are you eligible? Short answer is no, you're not. However, you might be, right? Because again, you have until June 30th of 2023 to get a credential from the Maryland Child Care Credentialing Program. So if you are doing that, and if you are going to do that, then you would potentially be eligible within the span of this. And so you certainly should still include yourself or those employees who that would fall to, if though that's not on the table. If you know that either yourself or your employee or employees are not going to be doing that, they won't hold or otherwise obtain a credential from the Maryland Child Care Credentialing Program by June 30th of 2023, then they would not be eligible. That is a requirement here, and it's defined in the law as well. So because of that provision, you are going to want to potentially think about how you distribute these bonuses, right? So let's say, in particular for, I think this is most complicated probably for all of you, for anybody who's essentially new hire in this year, where we have that $500 split for the second 500 after they have their credential and the 6 months that they've completed. And you can essentially, again, choose how you want to administer that. The recommendation is, of course, to wait to give them the bonus, especially that second $500 until they've demonstrated and met that. Because here's the thing, if for some reason you pay that out, and again, what MSD is going to do is we're going to pass the money to the provider. Providers will pay their staff, et cetera. So if for some reason that employee doesn't end up getting that credential and you've paid that out, MSDE, when we're going to do our final reporting, we will check, confirm that, we'll see that in the credential system, and then we would invoice the provider, not the employee, the provider, back for those funds. So you would need to get those funds back from the employee. So to save yourself that trouble, to save yourself that hassle, it's probably a best practice to make sure that those funds don't go out to the eligible employee until after you've confirmed both, in this case, for example, that they've been there for the 6 months, they have some sort of credential, have obtained that credential from the Maryland Child Care Credential Program. I'm going to turn now into the application itself. We're going to quickly walk through the application, and then we're going to circle back to Q&A from there. Here we go. So again, you can access the link a few different spots in here. I'm going to go from the first one, but again, the link is embedded throughout the application. Once you come into the application, here's what it looks like. Here's your first page. It's just a quick overview. When you're navigating through the application, you're going to use this arrow on the bottom corner to do that. And your first page here is where you're going to enter the employee information. See, and again here, we try to remind you in case you have a question, but again, if you have no employees, but you yourself are eligible, right, as a provider, and you have a credential and you do either participate in the Child Care Scholarship Program by having active students enrolled or are Excel's participating provider, put yourself here. So what you're going to do is you're going to enter your name, your date of hire. Let's say I'm July 1st, 2022, and I work 25 hours per week, right? That's what I'm going to do. Ideally, though, I'm going to spell my name correctly. Sorry about that, everybody. You'll notice here that we have about 53 slots. This was designed to meet as best we could, the number of staff who you may have. There is no cap on the number of staff you can include. If they're eligible, include them in the application. One thing to note, though, is that once you submit the application, you can't come back and edit it. Okay, that's for, again, that's for both fairness and the time frame, right? Because it's first come, first serve. So what we are going to do when we're going through and checking your applications is we are going to take the last full complete application that we have submitted for a given provider. If you have multiple sites, you can submit these in one application. You would just want to make sure you use, the way to think about it this way is if you buy tax ID. So whoever, by W-9 or by tax ID, essentially, if it's the same unit, you can combine them into one application. If they are different, then you're going to need to submit different applications. But once I submit the information, I can go here and go to the next page. Here is where you're going to enter the provider name. Again, so I'll say, Justin's Child Care Center. And then so that's the name of the Child Care Center. Please, if you can, use your the legal name on your W-9. We can look things up with your provider ID, but it would be it is a good practice and a good idea in general, or and through your EIN. It is a good idea and a good practice. Please go ahead and use your legal provider name. So Justin Dayhoff. Address, I'm going to do us here at MSDE. Don't have a second line. Baltimore, Maryland, 21201. I'm going to put my email here. I'm going to do my phone number. And then I'm going to put my tax ID number. So for some of you, this is an employee ID number. For some of you, this is a social security number. It's whatever you use on your W-9 or whatever you use for your reporting for your business. Okay. So I'm just going to put 123 for now. And then you select which county you're in. So let's say I am in Charles County. I'm going to select Charles County here. Not to pick on Charles County today. I feel like we're picking on Charles County a little bit. Okay, your first question then it's going to ask you, these employee numbers correspond to the employees that you've already reported on the other screen. So this is where you're going to come through and say, this is you just making sure, yeah, no, they meet that requirement. They work more than 20 hours per week. So this is where you'll flag whether or not they work a minimum of 20 hours per week. Are they currently credentialed through the Maryland Child Care Program, or will they be credentialed by June 30th of 2023? Right. So again, it's either of those are what we want to know here. We want to know, are they credentialed or will they be credentialed? If the answer to either of those questions is yes, put it here. If the answer to both questions is no, the answer is no. Okay, again, either question is yes, you can check yes. If they don't have one and they're not going to get one, please check no. Next part of your screen, you're going to scroll down. Has the employee completed and signed an attestation that they will remain employed with your organization for at least 6 months? So again, this is where, and we talked about this earlier, you don't need to send in the attestation form, retain it for yourself, right? You're going to hold on to that form, but this is where you tell us that you've done that, right? I'm going to go and say, yep, Justin, he started after July, he needs one of these. Great, I'm going to go ahead and check yes. And that's it. That start to finish is the application. So from start to finish, that's all it takes. You will get a confirmation email when these come out. So I do encourage you to check your email as those come out and use that. Again, you'll get the full copy of your application. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open up the Q&A here and turn to this and kind of walk through the Q&A. Just as a reminder to everybody, as we mentioned at the beginning, We're not doing raised hands for this because we don't have the unmute feature. So just make sure if you have a question, you use the Q&A feature. Again, not chat, the Q&A feature, which are those little comment bubbles with question marks in them. That's how we'll do live Q&A today. So I'm going to go ahead and start going through from the beginning. As I go through, if you've submitted something, you'll probably see me go ahead and click a thumbs up on it. That's just me tracking to make sure we've issued a response. Okay. All right. Any credential, yes, any credential, as long as, I should say, any level credential. So any level credential from the Maryland Child Care Credential Program will work. It's got to be from the Maryland Child Care Credential Program, but any credential. If I do not have a credential still, can I apply? Yes, you can apply, but in order to be eligible, make sure you have a plan to get that credential by June 30th of 2023. If that's not going to happen, you would not be eligible. If funds are being given directly to the center, how should we distribute that to employees? So again, we actually talked about this, your discretion, how you do that. And again, for most of this, if the employee doesn't have the credential yet, and they worked for you, so for that first bucket, if the employee doesn't have the credential yet, but they worked for you by June 30th, again, I would say go ahead and wait on giving them that $1,000 until you get evidence that they have that credential. That way you don't have to worry about trying to get it back. As for the new hires, again, once you get that attestation form in the first piece, you can give them the first 500, but then you're going to have to wait and get that second 500 again after they have the credential and they've been there for 6 months. I have Excel level and I'm running my own childcare, but I have no credential. Can I still apply? Same answer. You can apply, but you have to have a credential or you have to get one by June 30th. That's in the law. My center is currently enrolled to complete Excels, but we have not finished it. Do we qualify? If you are in the process and you are participating in Excels, then you would meet the qualification requirement. If a worker was employed and credentialed and worked for 1 year and recently left, do you include them with this bonus? No, you would not. You're going to want staff who currently work at the center. If you're expecting to pay funds out of payroll and taxing the employees, what about the employer taxes that will be owed for distributing? Will the state reimburse us for these costs? Can we use the operating cost bonus to cover that? You can use the operating cost bonus to use that, absolutely. There are no other funds though. By law, the calculation amount here is pretty straightforward. We will give you $1,000 multiplied by the number of eligible staff, $500 multiplied by the number of eligible staff. So but you can plan for that and use those costs to offset those withholding as well. If we have multiple locations, does each location need to submit an application? No, but we do ask that you combine it by tax ID number. So as long as those are all under the same business name, like the same W-9, same tax ID, that's fine. If technically they're all separate business entities, then you would need to submit different applications. What if the provider has locations? So same thing for that, same question. What if you've already submitted the application, you receive a 2-week notice from an employee that they're leaving and we end up receiving funds for that person? How do we go about giving that money back to MSDE? Great question. What we'll be doing as, once we release our awards, we'll provide a number of different additional steps and guidance for those providers who are being awarded the funds for the provider and their employees. As a part of that, we'll go over any of the reporting requirements. We'll provide detailed help and customer support essentially to make sure that you know how to do that. The actual process will be once we go through, we'll show you how to identify that to us this spring. When you do that, we'll issue an invoice and you would just return that to us. Where is the application link? Again, the application link is in the program guidance and it's spread throughout. Anytime it says I enter the application via the link here, it's also down below here on the submission instructions. Both of those constitute the submission link for the program. When will the funds be sent to the providers? So we are planning to begin issuing those funds in January, right? So the application for this window ends on June 30th. I'm sorry, on November 30th, coming up, right? Because it's first come, first serve, because the timestamps and everything like that, this isn't an application we're going to be processing on a rolling basis. So we're going to open up the applications on, or around December 1st. So sometime mid-December, you can expect us to start issuing award notifications. We will follow that in January with actual distribution of funds to awarded providers. And again, we will start that. That will take time as we go through. So that's not the end. If you have, if it's January 10th and you haven't gotten funds in your bank account, that's not a cause to be concerned. What I can say is that both when we release the award letters and as we move forward from there, we will stay and continue to stay on and be communicative with how that will all work. Will credentialing be properly staffed to account for all the new applications coming in? Yes. If we have 350 plus eligible employees across 3 counties, can we submit our application via spreadsheet? There are only 53 lines in the online application, or should each application submit them using the same FEIN? Yeah, in this case, just because that is an exception to pretty much most situations, I would recommend you go ahead and split those out across multiple applications. Only because, and the reason for that is we need to have those timestamps because it's the only way that we can properly queue everybody for the first come first serve provisions of the law. If I select Baltimore County and I have employees and centers in Anne Arundel and Baltimore City, how does the program know from where to pull the funds? Use, and for jurisdictions, so if you are across multiple jurisdictions, use the address listed on your W-9. Use the address listed on your W-9. Wherever that jurisdiction is, that's the one you should be using. See, if you have submitted an application 3 weeks later, there's a new employee, do we use hiring assistance money to pay them? So again, no, if you've submitted an application, you get an additional employee, that employee is not included in here, right? Because we're only going to pay out for the employees who are reflected in the application. Again, that's in part because of the timing of the program, right? There's only $16 million here. It's first come, first serve. So if this was the case where if it either wasn't first come, first serve, or, it was a big program designed to go to every provider in the state or something like that, that would be a case where, yes, sure, right? But because these funds will probably be expended right when we're completing the application process, you're going to want to make sure you just get this in with who you've got. Make sure any new hires that are reflected here are reflected as of the July 1 through the current date that you submit. You don't actually apply for categories, you submit the application, and based on the content of the application, we make sure to attribute any costs for those buckets automatically for you. So you don't have to do any of that, just submit the application. We have everything in there to make all the determinations accordingly. Employees that were working before July 1st are eligible. Yes, they're eligible for that first bucket. In fact, the biggest bucket. So that $10 million bucket is for employees who were working on or before June 30th of 2022. How is Maryland ensuring providers are giving money appropriately to their employees? So again, we have, and we'll release this information with the grant letters throughout the spring, but we'll be doing that a couple of different ways, including through reporting requirements, where the providers will have to, both report that they've distributed those funds and provide evidence either via pay stub or confirmation from the employee that they have received those funds and that those match the ones in your original application. All right. So again, I'm seeing a lot of raised hands, but you're going to want to use the Q&A here. So that's how we're calling on questions. We're not opening up the mic here. So if you have questions, take a minute and drop those into Q&A. And we'll continue reading. I'll stall here for a couple minutes as we have some extra time before the window's through for today. Okay. Will this recording be shared? Yep. Again, this is going to be posted online. This will be posted on the program website. And anyone hired in October, will they qualify? They could qualify, right? It depends on whether or not all those other criteria are met. But yes, in theory, if they hired in October, they could absolutely qualify. If the funding is determined by amount of centers in the county, why would it be appropriate to use the county of our administrative office in the application when centers are in other counties? Again, if you are based in one county, that is the basis of jurisdiction. That's what we'll be using for the apportionment of those funds. Paying out the bonus. Should 40-hour employee receive more than 20-hour employee? Nope. It is just a minimum threshold for eligibility, but it's not necessarily something that's designed to be prorated or correspond to some sort of half-time or full-time. That's just the criteria for eligibility. All right. See if we have any new ones. Not yet. We do still have a couple more questions, or a couple more minutes for anybody looking for questions. All right. Can we email you directly with any follow-up questions? Of course. If you are on the phone, you can't access the Q&A. There actually is. You just have to go into the menu setting on Teams Mobile, and you can access the Q&A feature there. Is this for family providers too? Yes, again, whether or not you are a large center, even if you have no employees, you can absolutely be eligible as well, as long as you meet the other criteria. And then again, level of credential does not determine amount, just eligibility. And can an employee donate the bonus back to the nonprofit? I mean, it's their money. The employee can do, I suppose, whatever they would like to do with it. I can't. They can do whatever they'd like. Should we wait until they receive the credential or once they submit the application? I think you're asking if you should wait till they receive the credential before issuing the payment. The second one, I would wait till they get the credential, because so much can happen between then. So we'll do that. Employees such as cooks and office staff are eligible. So the law provides that the eligible employees are ones who interact directly with the children and provide some sort of teaching like experience. So no, I mean, that doesn't line up with the intent. Also, we wouldn't necessarily expect to see cooks or office staff have the child care credentialing program credentials that would also make them eligible. If you made a mistake and you redid the application, again, go if you made a mistake or if you need to add somebody or do something like that and you need to resubmit the application, please make sure you do so. And we will, like I said, what we'll be using is the last fully complete received application, right? The reason that you can't edit an existing application or go back and amend it is in fairness to everybody, since it's first come first serve, right? Because otherwise, technically, I could go in and I could just go in today and submit something and know it's wrong and then come back and try and get it later. So that's just us making sure that everybody's staying in the right order. And yes, a director or assistant director would be eligible because they are in charge of providing care and overseeing care. So as long as, again, the big thing there is they do have to meet the other credentialing requirements though. So they've got to have the credential and all those other pieces, but in those positions would be. check this, see if we have any last questions here. Okay, I don't have any other questions, so I just want to end with a thank you to everybody for joining the call today. And we've got 2 more sessions coming up here. Feel free to join those. You're more than welcome to join for additional sessions. I did get one more. How do we identify the operating cost hiring bonus needs on the app? You do not. That's not something you identify on the application. We calculate it based on employee assistance costs are flat bonuses. It's $500 per new hire in this year. That's how those are calculated. So we don't actually need to know that. So we don't ask for it in the application. Okay, we've got 2 more sessions coming up. Do feel free to join those. One is next Wednesday, the 9th at 6:30 to 7:30, and one is Saturday, the 12th from 10 to 11 a.m. So do feel free to reach out. And of course, thank you all for all you do. And we will look forward to either seeing some of you or chatting with some of you very soon. Have a great day, everybody. And of course, happy Friday.